To order this meeting of the Forest Grove City Council on Monday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Will the city recorder please call roll?
Council President Gustafson. Here. Councilor Gustafson. Council President Rippey.
Absent, excused.
Councilor Martinez.
Here.
Councilor Marshall.
Here.
Councilor Valenzuela.
Here.
Councilor Ewing.
Absent, excused.
Mayor Wenzel.
Here, thank you. Forest Grove City Council meetings are located on the land of the Tualatin Kalapuas, who call themselves the Atfalati. They are now part of the Confederate States of Grand Ronde. Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde, excuse me. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. We're now on to item B on the agenda, public comment. Time provided for anyone wishing to speak to City Council on an item not on the agenda or on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. The public comment period shall not exceed 30 minutes unless a majority of councilors present vote to extend the time. Zoom attendees may use the raise hand option to be called on. Okay, our first person signed up for public comment is Dane Sauer.
Hi, my name is Dane Sauer. I live at 3526 16th Place, Forest Grove, Oregon. Today I'm actually here to discuss a different topic besides the data center. This is regards to the charging of the baseball fields. Not just baseball fields, it's actually all the fields and the parks that are going on in Forest Grove. I'm really bad with doing these introductions in front of a panel like this, so I have it written down, so I apologize about that. So. My wife and I grew up in Forest Grove, and we are now raising our kids in this community. When we were young, we did not have the opportunities to play sports, but programs like Forest Grove Youth Baseball and other local programs give the opportunity to all kids, no matter their circumstances, to play. The programs give kids positive things to do, builds confidence, and so many other skills that they will carry into their futures. The proposed fees will limit the access to kids, and these programs will negatively impact so many members of our community. Not only do these programs give back to the kids, but the parents give back to the kids, but the parents put so much time and effort into making our fields amazing. The countless volunteer hours many have spent an invaluable amount of time. They say it takes a village to raise kids. That doesn't sound right. So everybody knows the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we're a community, we're a large village. It takes a whole village to raise all our kids. When parents have to struggle to see if their kids can go play a sport, we're failing them as a village at that point. So the parents and kids come together. We were able to provide a great environment for everyone involved. I'm going to backtrack. So we need. I lost all my stuff. Sorry, guys. I grew up in a broken home, so I didn't even have the opportunities to play baseball. I always wanted to play baseball. When I finally got the opportunity to play, I really sucked. I kind of gave up, so it was my mistake. I've got a 7 and 9-year-old, and I am trying to give them the best opportunity as possible. And I do see other parents struggling trying to get their kids doing sports, and the program that our program offers, it gives them the chance to do that. And if we start charging god-awful amounts to get access to the fields, it's going to get passed off to the parents. The parents aren't going to be able to do it, therefore their kids aren't going to be able to do these programs. it's not just baseball, it's soccer, it's going to be the swimming, the aquatic center. It's going to put a different strain on Pacific University. There's more that's going to go with this. So I know there's going to be more discussion on this, but I just wanted to bring this to topic. And I still am opposed against the data center. So
Thank you. Dale Feek. Hello, Mr. Feek.
Hello, Mayor Wenzel and councilors. I'm Dale Feek, 3363 Levina Drive, Forest Grove. Data centers are energy hogs. As I stated while being interviewed by K2TV reporter Barry Mangold. Matt File, CEO of Crane Data Center, told Mangold that power rates are going up across the United States and it has nothing to do with data centers. However, Mangold rebutted File's statement by saying that experts are stressing that power systems in Oregon and beyond are facing unprecedented load growth uncertainty caused primarily by the explosion of data centers, transportation, and electrification. Forest Grove Power and Light agreed to Crane's purchase of 2 transformers to provide 10 megawatts of power for Crane's Building 1. 10 megawatts of power is enough for 1/5 of the households in Forest Grove. On their website, Crane stated they will need at least 100 megawatts of power for Phase 2, which would be enough power for 2 Forest Groves. Another land use application will be required for Phase 2 of Crane's data center campus. Washington County Chamber of Commerce, who supported the massive building of data centers in Hillsborough, also fully supported Crane's data center. Remember, ratepayers. We have an unprecedented electrical load growth uncertainty in our region. In the long run, we could have power outages and much higher electrical bills primarily caused by data centers. I think Forest Grove needs to modernize its building codes to deal with the impact of data centers. Thank you for listening, and thank you for letting the previous speaker go over 2 minutes. That's very kind of you.
Thank you for speaking too. There is no one else signed up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public comment? You may come up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mark Arendt. I'm a resident of Forest Grove at 15705 Northwest Timmerman Road. And just wanted to, definitely with not much time here with the 2 minutes, but just to highlight, I've been in the Silicon Forest as a IT professional for 30 years. And just what I think has been presented publicly about the data center seems like a lot of misleading information. And I superficially, I see summarizing that I think there's more liability to the city with this data center than there is that is as an asset. One concern just that may not have come up is I looked at the acoustic study, and I wrote down something here to try to get through this quickly. Crane Data Center, they hired a licensed acoustical engineering firm from San Francisco to help address the potential impacts of noise. Yet concerning was that to model what would be the actual noise impact, their studies seems to have, sampled the current ambient environment, and then they added a 10 decibel, a plus 10 decibel to simulate that would be the facility. And I found that kind of odd that, like in the real estate industry, when you're selling your home, they do comparables. But, there's a major data center out here in Hillsborough that I'm curious why the study didn't include actual ambient noise or noise from existing data centers. I took a trip over to QTS and just put out my cell phone to just collect the audio. I mean, it's significant. And just from looking at the overlay that you have these residents nearby, it just seems a little dysfunctional. What I also noticed about the noise study was there was no mention of diesel. There was no mention about diesel generator. That's the backup generally that you would get at a data center. When you lose your power, your A and B sources into the building, they'll have a diesel generators, like banks of them, and they'll put diesel on site. Generally, they'll have thousands of gallons because they want to keep those diesel generators running for a full day or so to then get diesel coming in. So that was just a concern I wanted to bring out to you about, is just pay attention to the noise. I know residents are concerned about it, but it just seemed like that study was doctored. It was funded by Crane, so kind of a conflict of interest. And then, and in closing, one last thing to pay attention to is the image that was presented publicly to the data center. It looks more like a civic center. You don't see the high security fences that go around data centers. I am very familiar with data centers, and security is a critical component of them. You can't get close to them. Like when I was doing the audio, I was across the street. So you don't, the public doesn't see the security, the public doesn't see all the cooling. So you see this pretty front. When I looked at the newspaper, I was only introduced to this issue a few weeks ago. I'm coming very late into the game, but just reading the public statements and what the Crane has provided and what the city talked about, it doesn't add up with me. If you go to a data center, I encourage you. I don't know if any of you in the city council has been to a data center. Have you been inside of one? Ask yourself that. Not only if you haven't been inside of one, you don't need to. Take a trip around one. It's amazing the power electronics that are involved. You have a fantastic example here in Hillsborough. I think Hillsborough is rated 7th in the nation for total watts used. It's a significant footprint over there. Just take an opportunity to drive there and see what an actual operating data center looks like. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to give public comment? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to give public comment? One hand raised. Mr. Dan Morris,
Yes, can you hear me?
we can hear you. You may begin whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Thank you, members of the board and mayor, for this opportunity to speak to this important issue of data center. And what occurred with the Crane application, I think, is inappropriate, where I've outlined and noticed to the council earlier today that 17.1220 requires of a neighborhood meeting, which never took place. And there is some ambiguity allowed by the director. However, the question comes up is, what purpose do we have at this provision in the code if it's not going to be applied? In this case, is probably the biggest land use issue in Forest Grove history, and this hasn't been applied. And what the provision calls for is for the applicant to arrange for a community meeting, and for that meeting to engage the community, and for both parties to engage in discussions about offsetting some of the concerns. Secondarily, it uses the word must, that this neighborhood meeting must take place before any approval of the application. So this doesn't require an appeal process. This requires notice to the council, and the council now has to determine to how to adhere to the rules and regulation that hasn't been presented before. The council must comply. This is a matter of significant concern to the Forest Grove community. If there is uncertainty, the approval by the previous approvals are revocable under 71310 of the code. It gives indications that permits are revocable under such provision. And now is the time, because the approval by the council is on the agenda tonight for final approval, and now's the time for the council to take into consideration the comments made by the previous speakers and some of the appeal information, and to send this back and start this and involve the community where the community ought to be involved in this process, because the city of Forest Grove is unaware of the significant cost that this is going to create in the community. I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and trust that the council will take into consideration these things. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my understanding that our community development director, I did receive your email today about your concern about the neighborhood meeting and the type of application. And so our community development director or someone from his staff is going to be emailing you this week to answer some of those questions. So you should get a staff reply in this week. Thank you for your public comment. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to give public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item C on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted with a single motion without separate discussion. Councilors who wish to remove an item from the consent agenda may do so prior to the motion. Any items removed will be discussed and acted upon following the approval of the remaining items. What is the wish of the council?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
The consent agenda was moved by Councilor Valenzuela and seconded by Councilor Martinez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say aye. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a vote of 5-0. Item D, additions and deletions. City Manager? Nope. Go ahead.
No additions or deletions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Any proposed by council? Hearing none, we're going to now move on to item E, which is presentation. The council will hold questions until the end of each presentation. A 2-minute reminder will be given to the presenter to conclude remarks. Our first presenter is from Metro Senior Solid Waste Planner. It's Rosalind Green, who's our Metro Strategic Policy Advisor, and Louise Sandoval, who's our Metro Senior Solid Waste Planner. I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just waiting for Luis to get on.
I think he was on and then he just popped off.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
There we are. So good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to engage with you all this evening. My name is Rosalind Green, and I'm the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Metro's Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Division. And joining with me today, as you mentioned, is Luis Sandoval, and he is the Project Manager for the Regional Systems Facilities Plan, which we'll be discussing this evening. And I just want to emphasize, we really appreciate the opportunity to share updates on priorities for waste prevention and environmental services, and how those priorities support local visions for waste management and protecting the environment. Next slide. So 5 years ago, Metro Council adopted the 2030 Regional Waste Plan, a visionary plan for managing the region's recycling and garbage system with key priorities listed here. And we partnered with your communities to move this work forward. Today, we are here to discuss one of the key priorities of that plan, focused on ensuring equitable and affordable services for everyone, no matter where you live in the region. To address this priority, Metro's been working on the Regional System Facilities Plan that takes a holistic view of the region's waste system, addressing long-standing gaps in facilities and services. Next slide. We have a lot of terminology in the garbage world, and I just want to clarify that we use the term garbage and recycling system as an all-inclusive term to refer to the number of facilities that make up the system and manages waste and materials in the region. This includes materials such as garbage and recyclables, and this graphic shows how these materials move through the system. Some materials may be picked up at the curb or taken directly to a facility. The system facilities plan is focused on the facilities and services that support the transfer of materials to their final destination, including the facilities that collect materials that may not be available for curbside, like household hazardous waste, which we also call HHW, and other hard to dispose of recycling items. Access to services in the system are experienced differently by people throughout the region. The current distribution of facilities means some people have easy access to service, such as getting rid of large household items and hazardous waste, while others do not. Next slide. A good example of the current state of our system is Metro South, and you'll see a picture here. And this facility is located in Oregon City and opened to the public on April 11th, 1983. It was designed originally to host an incinerator. That facility was expected to handle up to 800 tons of waste every day. Fast forward to today, and Metro South processes more than 330,000 tons annually, with many days over 1,000 tons. So the challenges to this are daily, and we do our best at operating an overburdened facility in a safe and efficient manner. However, to keep high quality materials out of landfill, to have more space to separate out recyclable, reusable, and repairable items, and to ensure safe traffic flows, redevelopment of this site is critically needed. Metro South is just one example of how over the last 40 years, the garbage and recycling needs of the region have changed. Some people have easy disposal options if they live close to a Metro transfer station, but many people in the region do not. And as the region grows, more investment is needed to ensure that everyone, no matter where they live, has equal access to garbage and recycling services. Next slide. We also know that we live in a place where people care about the environment and are willing to spend more time and money to keep valuable resources out of the landfill. This is one of my favorite pictures in this presentation because it does a great job illustrating our values in action. What you see here is a local recycling event hosted by an organization known as James Recycling. And at this event, people waited more than a half an hour to recycle items that cannot be collected at the curb and paid up to $3 a bag. Next slide. So to address the aging system, Metro Council directed us to complete a regional systems facilities plan to take a holistic look at all of the region's facilities to identify investments needed to improve access to facilities and services for everyone. This plan will be a 20-year vision to provide a roadmap for future investments, and it's a vision document that will identify facility program investments for the region to pursue. Essentially a blueprint to set direction, and any proposed investment will have many decision points along the way for full implementation. And I just want to emphasize here that the implementation of the plan will be a collaborative effort, engaging local governments, residents, and businesses, just like we did for the plan development. Next slide. Over the last 18 months, Metro engaged with local government, industry, community, businesses, and tribal governments across the region and hosted an international symposium and engaged with Metro Council to develop a set of investments to address the gaps in our system. Each phase of the plan focused on building a chapter of the plan through an iterative process, starting with values and outcomes. And this slide just shows the many touch points and engagements that we did to inform this plan. And now we are in the final plan of phase of plan development, which is adoption. Next slide. You can think of the plan outline like a project roadmap. And here you can see an outline of all the chapters that make up the plan. And today we'll have a brief overview of the investment strategy and financing. So with that, I will hand it over to Luis.
Thank you, Rosalind, and good evening, members of the Forest Grove City Council. My name is Luis Sandoval, as Rosalind mentioned. I am a principal planner at Metro. I will like to start with a little bit about what we did in this project since the beginning of the project in phase one. In phase one, we established guiding values and outcomes. And after that, the project team engaged in activities and research to identify gaps in the region's reuse, recycling, and garbage system. That was the phase 2 of the project, the gap analysis. And 3 of the key gaps identified include gaps in access. Residents in areas like Washington County and East Multnomah County lack drop-off locations for recyclables, hazardous waste, and large reusable items. In facility gaps for collectors, these are the companies that collect waste from people's homes and from businesses. These companies face challenges related to access, costs, and disaster resilience for materials like food waste, yard debris, and garbage. We also found gaps that were expressed by reuse organizations. Reuse and repair businesses require more warehouse space for sorting and storing items, along with consistent funding to enhance collection and distribution. At last fall's symposium, we presented 4 scenarios for project partners to consider. These scenarios outline different approaches for Metro to address the identified gaps. The scenarios outlined different ways that Metro could fill the gaps identified in phase 2 of the project, which you can see on the right-hand side of this slide. It's a little bit hard to read maybe on your screen, but there were 4 scenarios. After the symposium and getting feedback from Metro Council, we heard strong support for what we call the distributed model. This approach focuses on creating smaller facilities throughout the region to improve access to services. Survey results show that people who participated in the symposium appreciated elements from the other scenarios too, including more support for existing reuse organizations and businesses and improving safety and efficiencies at existing facilities. The benefits of this model include greater access to services, increased recycling rates, better handling of hazardous and hard to recycle materials, and opportunities for public-private partnerships. So the draft plan that Metro has developed aims to enhance public and commercial facilities, food waste processing, and to support reuse and repair organizations over the next 20 years. There are 4 key investment areas in the draft plan, as you can see on this slide. We have community drop-off depots, reuse and repair, organics, and commercial transfer stations. I will go now into describing a little bit more of these investment areas. And of course, you can read the draft plan, which is out for public comment right now. In terms of the community drop-off depots, the vision here is to fill gaps that were identified by residents and small businesses, including providing more locations across the region to drop off items for reuse, for recycling, hazardous waste, and self-haul garbage, all in one place. These facilities would be designed for public customers driving cars and small trucks, separate from commercial haulers, and then to be able to easily separate material for recovery so that we encourage more waste reduction over sending garbage to the landfill. The example that you are seeing on your screen on the slide is a one-stop facility called an Eco Center in Burnaby, British Columbia, in Canada. On this next slide, you can see the approximate location of the 6 community depots envisioned in the draft system facilities plan, and some of the modeling estimates for drive times, recovery, and people to be served at these facilities as compared to the baseline today. For reuse and repair, the plan includes investments in 2 new facilities, a reuse warehouse and a reuse mall. Both projects would be planned and implemented in partnership with existing reuse organizations and businesses. There's also a third investment in this area, which is a sustainable reuse funding program, which would support businesses and nonprofits in recovering and diverting more materials from the landfill. In the organics area, we focus mainly on food waste, and this is because food represents the single largest component of the region's disposal waste stream and is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of food waste, the Metro Central Transfer Station facility in North Portland plays a crucial role in transferring and pre-processing food waste before it reaches an end market. This facility handles around 70% of the region's food waste. In our role, it is critical to maintain a contamination-free system to produce high-quality compost and avoid environmental and health risks from microplastics. So to improve the transfer and processing capacity of organics in the region, Metro will continue to invest in Metro Central as a regional hub for receiving residential and commercial organics from haulers. And as part of this plan, Metro will also develop public-private partnerships to support additional organics hubs in areas of the region where there are the greatest gaps. Now, moving on to the commercial transfer stations area. In this area, we heard Council express support for repurposing over time the two Metro transfer stations, Metro Central and Metro South, to focus on providing the services that are more challenging to provide for the private sector. This includes self-haul services as well as organics transfer services. Because the plan is proposing to convert Metro South to a community drop-off depot, this would create a service gap for commercial haulers in the southern part of the region. So to fill this gap, Metro would take a phased approach to seek to first authorize a new commercial transfer station, or if that doesn't work out, then develop a public-private partnership to build a new facility in the southern part of the region. There are also two important areas that need more time for research, assessment, and discussion, and these are wet waste tonnage flow and private facility regulation. The plan includes two actions in this area. The first one is to study the impact of lowering or removing Metro's wet waste tonnage guarantee, including evaluation of the current system to allocate wet waste to private facilities. We call this the wet waste tonnage allocation program. The second action in this area is to assess options for regulating private facilities to best serve the public interest. These actions are detailed more in the plan and will begin when the plan is adopted by Metro Council. This map is a little bit of the aim here is to give an overview, visual of the facilities and investment projects proposed in the draft plan. And it also summarizes some of the benefits of the plan. And I just wanted to note that the facility is outlined here with a gray circle or a dashed line around them. They don't have specific locations determined yet. The proposed investments are estimated to cost about $273 million over the 20-year implementation period of the plan. For comparison, the original scenarios that the project presented at the symposium in September of 2023 ranged from $280 million to more than $800 million. The investments in the plan would be financed through revenue bonds with debt paid off over 20-year periods. The estimated increase in the garbage bill for a typical single-family household in the region over the next 2 decades is between $1.50 and $2 per month on average and in today's dollars. This stays within what we heard people would be willing to pay for increased services after last fall's symposium. It's important to note again that this is a 20-year vision plan, and the specific costs and timing of each project will be determined in Metro's annual budgeting process. This annual budget development process and fee setting will be guided by Metro Council's solid waste fee policy with input from the Regional Waste Advisory Committee. And as we mentioned already, the draft plan is out for public comment, and we have 2 ways to provide feedback. One is to leave a public comment. There's a public comment form on the website, but you can also email, and there's a couple other ways to leave a public comment. And we also have an online survey that is available for people to provide input on specific areas of the plan. Both opportunities can be found on the project website and will be open for the month of October. The input that we receive will help shape the final plan to be considered for adoption by Metro Council in December. And this will set the foundation for future work to make the plan a reality. And with this, we would like to ask if you have any questions about the draft plan, or if there is specific input that you would like us to share with Metro Council.
Thank you. Councilor Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Luis and Rosalyn. Welcome, and thank you so much for this presentation. A few years ago, I participated quite a bit with the community in Cornelius, community members from Cornelius and Forest Grove to discuss the potential transfer station in Cornelius. Do you have any idea if that will become a reality, that transfer station? That because Metro did purchase a property, but I don't know if there is an update about that. All this community outreach was done before the pandemic came, so it was kind of left, a little bit in limbo. But we had an advisory committee with community members from Forest Grove and Cornelius and Hillsborough to participate in that. And I'm wondering if you have any updates on that.
Yeah, thank you. Luis, I'll get us started and then add anything. So first, I want to say thank you for your participation and the engagement for our Cornelius property. We really appreciate folks showing up and providing feedback. And so just thank you for that first. This plan, the Cornelius property is one of the top priorities pending the passage of this plan. And so we will prioritize development of that site with the passage of this plan. And like you said, there has been some bumps along the way, but that would be one of our top priorities. And I also just wanted to clarify that the open public comment period is actually being extended to November 6th. So just wanted to note that as well. We just extended it today, so that is late breaking. Louise, anything to add to what I just said?
I just wanted to add that some of the members of that community advisory group actually have served on this plan's community advisory group too. And it is one of the reasons why council wanted this project, this plan to be developed, is to take a holistic approach, because at the time when that property was purchased, Metro was also looking for a property in the southern part of the region to address the issues at Metro South. And so because there was no solid agreement on what to do at those sites, this is what led to this plan. So we understand from community members, especially in Cornelius and Forest Grove, that it has taken a long time. And so just so that you know, it's on pages 23 and 24 are the details for what is proposed at the Cornelius site. And the proposal that is in the draft plan is to build a community drop-off depot. So it is a little bit different from what was discussed, some of the options that were discussed when the Cornelius property was being purchased, which at the time was considering to build out a full service transfer station. So by that, we meant a facility that would accept residential customers as well as the trucks that collect the garbage and recycling from people's homes and businesses.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the update.
Thanks. I have two questions. I guess my first question has to do with the community engagement on the draft plan. I'm glad you're extending the time, and I'm just curious of how you are reaching out to people with more cost information. For my 10 years of doing elected public service work, community engagement is something we always, I think in any entity, we always struggle with. And it really isn't until the point where you can tell people the cost of something that they're like, hey, this is how it's going to impact me. So that's my follow-up question. billing cycle is $1.50 to $2 estimated, but there really is no information on how much it would cost a family to go drop something off at the dump, to do these different things. And so I guess I'm just concerned and curious of how, like, what is that cost going to look like to community members? And how are you soliciting feedback without that information? And then my third follow-up question is, are you tracking community engagement by districts? Like, are we, like, this is a holistic approach. And so making sure that right now you said, hey, we're going to extend the time, but I guess what are you doing to solicit more feedback within that extra week you're giving? Like, is there a gap in District 4, District 2, and how are you going to really go out and get that feedback?
Great question. I'll kick us off, Luis, again, and then feel free. We'll definitely add. So yeah, we extended the time period because of presentations like this one and ones that we're doing next week with City of Sherwood. Who else are we visiting, Luis? Lake Oswego.
Lake Oswego, yeah.
Yeah, and so we felt it was really important. And as you said, it's challenging to get the word out and get engagement in planning. And so that is definitely a challenge. Reaching people, especially during this busy time, is hard. And so we really value opportunities like this one to connect with folks in their meetings. And so that was one of the reasons behind changing the deadlines, was to engage with you and other city councils to get the word out and get that feedback. So thank you again for having us here today. And then to your question on how much will be charged. So currently at our transfer stations, we do not charge folks to bring household hazardous waste from their house, as well as recyclable materials. And there's a number of reasons for that. We also, a lot of the items that we are talking about, recyclables, are covered by extended producer responsibility programs. We live in a state where we have a strong ethic around creating systems that mitigate costs for our consumers. And so, as you may have heard, we have the Recycling Modernization Act. That's a groundbreaking legislation, as well as a new mattress recycling bill. Those costs will be subsidized by producers. And so we are doing everything we can to keep those costs low so people have access and have affordable access. But Luis, maybe you can go add to that based on anything else you want to add.
So we're also sending out another email to the list of people who have subscribed to the project, so to remind them of the public comment period and the extension. That's another way we're reaching out. The survey does collect information or ask people to provide their zip code, so that's one way we're tracking regional differences. Let me see, you asked about costs, and so we do include the cost information in the plan. We always struggle with the dilemma of putting too little information or too much information that is overwhelming and confuses people. But we do have the costs that you see in the plan reflect what we project in the future will affect the fees that Metro charges at facilities, as well as the regional system fee, which is charged on all garbage in the system. So one of the difficulties with showing what is going to be charged at each of these facilities is that also depends on council policy. So Metro Council, with input from the Regional Waste Advisory Committee and other voices, they can decide to maintain, for example, the minimum fee that is charged currently at Metro facilities, but increase the per ton fee. So there's some discretion on where to increase costs, where to decrease costs. In recent years, many jurisdictions and industry have pushed Metro to charge cost of service, for example. That means whatever the service costs, that is what gets charged to the customer. So that could mean a rebalancing of fees. And so that is the challenge that we have. And so that's why you don't see, for example, how much is Metro going to charge every year for the next 20 years with the draft plan, which is also very challenging to forecast.
Thank you.
So did that answer your question? I know it was kind of a big question, so I just want to make sure do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I mean, I still don't understand how your targeted approach to solicit feedback from districts and groups that are traditionally and who are not showing up to get feedback. I just think that it is hard work. Community engagement is hard work, but it's like, where are you going to put the effort into is usually, I would just prefer on the front end of like making sure we're communicating, getting feedback, like looking at costs, and then you'll have less work on the other side, right? Trying to explain and justify. And so I guess I'll say publicly, like, if, please, community members, if you're watching this, go give your feedback for this draft plan. Let Metro know what you're thinking. It's really, really important. But I just think too, like, any ways that you can contact more people and get, it's like just extending the time. It's like, are you calling? Are you working with other service providers, school districts, community centers? That was what I was curious about.
And if I may add, also reaching out to local nonprofit organizations like Centro Cultural, Adelante Mujeres, who have a lot of clients, people that they serve from the community, and try to get their voices heard as well. At Centro Cultural, they have a certification, a master recycler certification program in Spanish. That's the only place where this is provided. So the people there care very much for recycling, for the environment. So reaching out to them, it's always, you can never go wrong with reaching out to the nonprofits. Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, I did forget, that was the other thing that I wanted to mention. Actually, tomorrow we have a presentation in conjunction with Adelante Mujeres. So we have organized that as an event for their members. So it's by invitation only, but they have been following this process along from the beginning.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for the presentation. And it's nice seeing you via Zoom. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item E2, which is our Forest Grove Forward 2040 Vision Update with Sarah Singer Wilson, owner of SSW Consulting. Hello, how's it going?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Great. Really excited to share with you tonight some updates about Forest Grove Forward, to just let you know where we are in the process and talk about some of our engagement themes that are happening. So let me share my screen here. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. There we go. So I'm just going to make sure for anybody watching in the audience, just reorient to what this project is and our purpose, share some updates around communications and engagement, talk about upcoming engagement opportunities, and then wrap it up with sharing some of the next steps. So community visioning, we're working on the Forest Grove Forward vision, which will be defined goals and actions to help drive a community vision forward in alignment with mission and values. And the project is really focused around engagement that's going to have unity around a vision, values, and goals, having shared goals reached through collaborative discussion, and then at the end, a specific plan to help reach those, and alignment between the various plans that guide Forest Grove, and then making sure that through the engagement, we're building relationships that are going to help yield implementation results for the community and the organization. Some goals that we had at the onset of this project, we are working on that community vision and values that authentically reflects and represents the distinctive character of Forest Grove. The visioning process is all about engaging the broader community. The vision will be as good as the engagement is. And so we're really working hard, and we're in that phase of the project right now to make sure that we reach as many voices as we can. As we get those results from the engagement, really thinking through the potential impacts, constraints, and opportunities. Our fourth goal here that we keep at the forefront is to make sure that we are going to be using that community input to develop actions and that vision. And then fifth, as we get further into the project, we'll be outlining an implementation structure to help keep this vision alive, make sure it's not just a plan on a shelf, but rather a way of working in the Forest Grove community. So the process that we've been in, we did the scoping and planning and gathering up all your background materials, getting a steering committee assigned, and all of that happened back in the spring. That steering committee, one of the first things they did in June was to kick off and work on the engagement strategy. And we continuously check in with that strategy and make adjustments to it as we see how we're engaging with the Forest Grove community. I just listened to the end of the previous presentation, hearing about extending engagement schedules. We've also extended the engagement schedule for this project. There's a lot of activity as far as community engagement goes, and lots of different projects happening in your community, and we're all trying to engage everybody for the most part to make sure, again, that the plan is reflective. So in order to do that, it does require more time to give people enough time and capacity to engage with this project. So that has been extended to December, and I will talk more about that a little bit later in the slides. After we wrap up that first initial phase of engagement, we're going to be getting into the vision development. So drafting the vision, the values, the goals, and that will be presented to the city council, to the steering committee and staff, and to the community to be able to gather some input on that and further refine it. That'll serve as the foundation for our action planning. So we'll talk more about this later too, but we'll be hosting vision labs, which are focus groups around specific topics in the vision. And those will be happening towards the end of February and March. And then as we get that plan, the pieces are all going to start coming together at that point in time. And so we will be finalizing the draft and putting it out for a public comment period. And that'll happen in April and May. And then hopefully we'll be bringing it back to we'll have different council checkpoints along the way, but bringing it back to the council for adoption and the beginning of implementation come June. So it kind of gives you highlights where we've made a couple adjustments, which is really around this engagement period and where we're headed. As far as engagement updates, so when you think of it like an engagement pie, there's lots of different opportunities that are happening, some in person, some online, and then some other things, other collateral that's being put out and things that are happening as well. So a lot of the in-person engagement has been focused around the community events. This was part of the engagement strategy that we outlined with the steering committee from the onset and with staff, that you guys have lots of engagement events or lots of activities where people are gathering throughout, like towards mid to end of summer. And so we've taken advantage of all of those. The farmers market, National Night Out, Festival of the Arts, high school football games, and the annual town hall, the Sidewalk Chalk Art Festival, the Corn Roast, Oktoberfest, and there are a few others in there as well. We've been out engaging with local businesses in person, with the Economic Development Commission and the Teen Library Council. We've had a partnership with Adelante at the farmers market. They've been helping to do some engagement there. And we've had 3 steering committee meetings. There was a presentation to the Rotary Club, and there have been presentations at chamber events. As far as the online engagement, we've had the community survey that's been going. So we've been driving people towards the community survey in addition to these to the in-person events. And To do that, we've used social media pages. And in addition to on social media driving people towards the survey, we've also been gathering up comments there. So engaging with the various Facebook groups or community groups, whatever pages exist. We've been trying to get the word out in Forest Grove on those pages and making sure that we're documenting any comments that are shared that on those platforms as well. As far as some other online engagement, the Forest Grove e-newsletter, the city's website, we've partnered with the chamber to use their platforms as well. With Pacific University, distributed content and survey link to all university clubs and organizations. And then that last piece of the pie, so that kind of covers at a high level the online activity that's been happening. But then in addition to that, we've also done utility bill inserts, lots of print collateral that have gone out to local businesses, Pacific University, apartment complexes, senior living facilities, and city facilities, as well as conducting some community leader interviews. So we've really been out there trying to get the word out about this project. And having been at a couple of the events myself, it's always refreshing to hear when you try to engage somebody and ask them again for their input. They're like, well, I already took the survey, or I talked to somebody at the farmer's market last week. So always encouraging to hear things like that. So as I mentioned, the community survey is one piece of the engagement pie, and some of the data we've received here. The survey just closed last week, so we'll have a final tally for you soon. But as of last week, we had just about 1,400 responses to the survey. Of those, you can just see comparing to the demographic data in Forest Grove, who we heard from. So, this represents the survey data, and this represents what was shown in the census data. So a little overrepresented from the female respondents, but that's typical of what we see in other communities as well. As far as age demographics, who we heard from, you don't typically hear from a lot of kids because they're not on social media quite yet. This represents the under 18 group. 18 to 24, we heard from a few less there, and that's actually normal as well, which is why having opportunities like the high school football game or the teen library council or other ways to engage with that student population is really important. But as far as the other demographics, we're right on track in this age group, a little overrepresented here, as well as actually all of them. So we've heard from quite a few folks in the community and a good distribution. Here you can see as far as demographics on race, how it compares to the census data. And what we noticed in this area, this is where we kind of circled back with the steering committee a couple weeks ago to highlight there's a few gaps here. We noticed on the youth engagement, like the student, like the high school, college age students, we need to do more work in that area, and also to reach the Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin demographic in Forest Grove. And so the survey, while it's only one tool, it's one of the few tools where we can gather demographic data and recognize that there could be some areas where we could beef up our efforts. And so that's what you'll see is in a moment, as far as extending the engagement period, where we plan to do a little more. Not to say that we haven't engaged with a lot of folks from the Hispanic Latino background, but not anybody that has shared their demographic data, if you will. So as far as themes emerging from all the data that's been gathered, so again, we're continuing to analyze what's come in, but some preliminary themes that you can see. What do you like most about Forest Grove? What should we preserve into the future? These are a few comments that were highlighted: community size, the small town feel, events, downtown, or the revitalization of downtown, historic preservation, so the parks, the environment. Those are some things that we're hearing there. As far as the top 3 reasons why you live, work, learn, or play in Forest Grove, these are how things are ranking here: small town atmosphere, rural setting, safe community, ranked at the top of the chart. Your top suggestions for Forest Grove into the future. You can see in these word clouds some of the things that are popping out. You'll see grocery store in a couple of these, and parks. So it kind of just gives you a flavor for some of the content that we're hearing. And then how we've organized the data thus far, I'll take you through these sections quickly because, again, this is just a preview. It's not all complete yet. But right now, as things have been coming in, we've tried to place it all into buckets. And right now, it's organized into 8 areas. Not to say these will be the final ones, but for the time being, this is where they've landed. So we have economy, parks and recreation, transportation, housing, safety, education, beautification, and community connection. And to give you an idea of what some of the things we're hearing in the economy section, again, as you saw in the word clouds, a grocery store, even as of right now, 9% of those responses call out a specific grocery store that they want to see. More dining options, shopping options, downtown revitalization, updated infrastructure, walkability. So those are the things that we're hearing about right now. In parks and recreation, more activities for kids and families, more parks, trails, and green spaces, a recreation community center, updated park amenities, and things like specifically for children, young adults, sports fields, splash pad, playground equipment, shaded areas, things like that. Under housing, again, you saw in the comments, people really like the small town feel. And even though this may not be something the city has complete control over based on mandates that come from the state, the majority of the responses are feeling maybe a little overwhelmed by the housing growth, asking it to stop or slow down. They, as much as possible, want to keep that historic style and the small town charm. And then there are responses asking for housing that's affordable, such as more apartments and townhouses. So it's a mixed bag there, but that's what we're hearing from the community on that topic. For transportation, parking, sidewalks, bike and walking paths, public transit, better access to transit. So alternative transportation routes to reduce congestion. Those are some of the comments coming in the transportation area. And we're almost to the end here, but safety and education. So people are raising the concerns about homelessness, reducing speeding, calling for more community policing. In education, more K through 12 schools, particularly a second high school, is a popular comment. Improving quality, and then concerns of having additional housing without schools to support that increased population. Last one here, beautification and community connection. So under beautification, just improving the cleanliness and aesthetic of town, adding wayfinding signage, public art, architectural standards. And then in community connection, more community gathering spaces. Again, that idea of the community recreation center is coming up through that area as well as community events and increasing that connection between the Forest Grove community and Pacific University. So that just kind of gives you a flavor of what we're hearing through these engagement opportunities thus far, and we'll continue to work through the data as well as continue our engagement efforts. So some upcoming engagement opportunities. As I mentioned, we know that there's a few areas where we'd like to do a little more. So extending that timeline through the end of the year will be beneficial to reach some of these groups. We want to hit these communication and engagement goals, which is to be the second two here that are starred, conducting inclusive engagement, and then also emphasizing a focus on engaging the Latino and diverse communities of Forest Grove, as well as young adult students in the business community. So on that note, we have some plans just based on recommendations from staff, the steering committee, and others. Where we've got some of these partnerships underway and others in the works. As I mentioned, we're working with Adelante already. They've been a great partner to help at the farmers market, and we'll see what other opportunities can materialize with them. Centro Cultural, we've been diligently working to get some engagement partnerships in place with them. And they've been very, very busy with it being election season and helping to get voters out there. And so that should hopefully come together towards the end of this month or towards the middle of November so that we can work with them to do some additional focus groups with the Latino population. One of our steering committee members put us in touch with the Western Farm Workers Association, and they were really quick to respond and eager to help. And so we're working with them to organize some focus groups with their audience. We're also working with Veritas Collaborations. They worked with the Cornelius Vision Project and were really helpful and resourceful in working on the Latino engagement there. So hopefully some additional updates to come on that partnership. And continuing to work with Pacific University, the school district, and the business community to also increase that youth engagement, as well as continuing to do outreach with businesses. So in November and December, we'll stick with the same themes of the questions that you may have seen in the community survey or out at the farmers market, and ask some questions in smaller focus groups to gather some additional information from these different groups. Looking ahead from that, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some vision labs. This comes a little bit later in the process, so February and March. So once we've solicited all of the big broad ideas and we've categorized them into those different goal focus areas, then we'll start to review those. And the vision labs are a place to kind of test the ideas and then refine them further to make sure they fit into goals and actions, and are going to be something that the city can move forward, or another community partner agency, such as maybe the chamber or the school district, like working with those partners or entities to make sure that whatever action comes together is truly actionable and can be moved forward. And so we'll be soliciting folks to participate in those vision labs, and they could be from the community, from staff, from the community partner agencies. So we'll be working with the steering committee to get the word out about those opportunities, as well as the city. So be on the lookout for that. And council, you'll be receiving updates to help promote that to your networks as well. And looking forward to kind of digging, more into the details when we get to those vision labs. So as wrapping up this update, we'll be completing the engagement and outreach from now through December. The steering committee is scheduled to meet on November the 18th again to just kind of receive this update on this revised approach and talk about next steps. And then we have the council retreat and visioning workshop scheduled for January the 18th, where you'll receive a more in-depth review of all the details, and we'll be working on that draft vision. And then, as I mentioned, the vision labs will be happening late February into March of 2025. Any questions or additional updates that I could share? Anything else you're curious about?
Thanks, Sarah. Well, one thing that I'm not really curious, but I just want to share with you. So I'm really happy to hear that we're going to spend more time getting more engagement, specifically from the demographics that we did not get. And I think that includes with the steering committee. So one of the things I was like connecting up here is that I recommended to staff a few people to be added to the steering committee. And then one of those individuals is Miss Leslie Nunez. And sometimes I'm late to the party as well, but on Friday night, I attended a mariachi tradition benefit concert at the high school. And Leslie Nunez is the director of that program. She was on our CEP committee. But she's grown that program in the last 10 years from nothing to a middle school, a JV, and a varsity mariachi program, which is really good. And there was probably 200 people at that benefit concert. So I think, when we did, I worked the first Wednesdays, the Oktoberfest, the corn roast, but it's also like I think to what I need to do better, and hopefully I'll just keep getting better at this, is looking at things that might be new for me and not part of my culture, but finding those connectors in our community that will help us take this information to other groups in our communities and making sure we're getting that out. So I'm hoping that she will join the steering committee. And I'm just, I wanted to point this out at a public meeting because there is room for not only myself to grow, but obviously all of us to grow. And I just wanted to publicly recognize Leslie Nunez for this great mariachi program. And then also, hopefully solicit her to join us in the visioning project too. But I think, there's some good things coming out of it. And I'm glad to see that we're slowing down with the engagement. We realized we were not reaching our whole community and we really need to do that. So I'm happy with that. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Gustafson.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining us today. I might have missed it, but what day is the community survey ending? Has that ended?
It did. It closed last Sunday on the 20th. And so now we'll be asking a similar set of questions from the survey in those focus groups. So if there, are any other folks that you're trying to connect to an opportunity to engage at this bigger, broader level, please do send them our way and we'll make sure to plug in that input.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Sarah. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our third presentation, E3, is our Main Street presentation update by Donna Gustafson, President of the Forest Grove City Club.
It's different being on this side. This presentation will be not all that dissimilar from Sarah's, as it's a similar strategy building process that we're both going through. So you will definitely see some similarities. Main Street program. Next slide, please. What is the Main Street program? It's a strategy-driven framework that helps revitalize downtown. So it is a methodology that is used. And this methodology includes, which you will hear probably a lot in the next year, is the 4-point process. So using economic vitality, design, promotion, and outreach is what you use in this methodology for your transformation strategy. So for a Main Street program, one of the requirements is to have a committee that is focused on each of those 4 points, which is what has made the Main Street program so successful today. Next slide. And this is the purpose of the City Club of Forest Grove. This is our mission statement, and it is very broad and very vague, but it's meant to be. And basically the mission of the City Club of Forest Grove shall be to improve the quality of life in the city of Forest Grove with particular emphasis on fostering vibrant public life in the central part of the city. So at its inception, the City Club of Forest Grove, their focus has been the downtown district of Forest Grove, the community there, and the businesses. Next slide. What are our high-level goals? That picture is a cleaning day that we did this past spring. We had a bunch of volunteers that joined us to clean downtown Forest Grove. So the high-level goals, of course, are to revitalize the downtown district of Forest Grove, promote community engagement, involvement, and enrichment, stimulate economic stability and growth, revitalize and maintain the historic buildings and charm of the downtown district, identify placemaking opportunities, and that would be creating a place for people to want to go to. Increase tourism by increasing first-time visits and returning tourists, promoting and influence partnerships in Forest Grove, enable, promote, and influence downtown community networks, and provide business and community support and programs, and create and maintain a play where you live community. Next slide. All right, this is our 2024 Main Street Roadmap. We applied for the Main Street program with the letter of support from the city the end of January in 2024, and we were accepted at the very end of February, very beginning of March in Q1. And in Q2, we signed the contract and met with our Main Street coordinator and had our steering committee kickoff meeting. And during Q3, we spent the time educating the committee, educating the board, planning next steps, normalizing our committee, performing interviews to fill the rest of the vacant spots on the committee, and developing a community survey. And this community survey is similar to the 2040 vision survey, but it will be specific to the downtown district. During Q4, during Q4, we just completed filling the positions on our steering committee, and we will begin to develop our four-point committees that we talked about at the beginning of the slide, and we will start the grant planning process. Next slide. And you can see this is the end of 2024. So last quarter, we are building those committees, and we'll be sending out a community survey probably in the next 3 weeks. So that's one of the timeline things that kind of was funny with the 2040 vision, because it was recommended that we not send out our survey until at least 2 weeks after the city's survey has completed. The overlap there would just be too confusing. And so we'll do our community survey a little bit later, and we too will have forums and town halls very similar to how Sarah is working her project for the 2040 planning. And as you see at the bottom, at the same time, we'll be working on our grant planning for the Main Street Revitalization Grant that's coming up in after the first of the year. And that grant is upwards of $400,000 per recipient. So it's the biggest grant that they have every other year for the Main Street program. Next slide. Accomplishments. So here's our list of accomplishments. I won't bother to read every single one of them to you, but we were very successful with our events that we held this year. Our Oktoberfest revenue doubled. Part of that was because of a larger marketing budget that we had this year. Thank you to the city for that as one of our contributors. We also applied for our 501c3 so that we could address the community piece of the Main Street program and bring more value to our grant searches with a C3, because we are a C6. And we have a downtown project forum scheduled at the beginning of November. We haven't had that. That's the meeting with the downtown businesses to let them know about the downtown improvements that was approved by the city council at our last meeting. Next slide. We have a variety of partnerships and relationships listed here, and we will be in the process of refining and maturing all of our relationships that we have currently in the city of Forest Grove and outside the city. Next slide. Frequently asked questions. Is the Main Street program a partnership with the City Club of Forest Grove Cornelius Chamber of Commerce, and City of Forest Grove? And this just clarifies that the Main Street program uses a partnership-based methodology and includes several organizations in Forest Grove, including Pacific University and Friends of Historic Forest Grove. And will there be a separate entity created to be the Main Street program? No, some cities do have a completely new organization that's developed. Most of those cities do that because they're so small they don't have any programs or any nonprofits already developed. But the City Club of Forest Grove, after speaking with the Main Street coordinator, it was clear that creating a new organization was unnecessary and time-consuming. Next slide. Next steps. We applied for our 501c3, so we're hoping that that is accepted soon. And the name of the 501c3 is the Forest Grove Downtown Alliance. We will complete our strategic planning, start on our grant planning, continue to nurture our network and our partners, and begin data refinement. We did do a collection of all of the businesses, all of the buildings, all of the homeowners in the downtown area. So now it's the step of refinement of that data. Next slide. How can the city support? Being a part of the Main Street program is only the first step. The programs which are the most successful in the other cities are programs where the city is financially supporting the organization who is providing the Main Street program for that city. So continue to attend program meetings, which Miles is our staff member that's our partner during our Main Street steering committee meetings. Continue to provide data. It would be really great if we could have a small section in the What's Growing On for the City Club of Forest Grove to promote our new program. Modify the street sweeping and other maintenance goals to more closely align with the goals of the city and a healthy community. Allow use of city meeting spaces as part of the partnership. Invite the City Club of Forest Grove to participate in the 2040 vision development as it pertains to the downtown district, and provide an annual budget for the City Club of Forest Grove. Next slide. So just spoke of budget. This is an example of the 2023 Oregon Main Street Salary and Budget Survey. So Oregon Main Street program at the state level did a survey of all of the Main Street programs, affiliate, designated, all of the different levels, and they assessed where the money comes from to fund those programs. And the most successful programs did have funding from the city, and as you see here, this is an average, on average, and these are cities that are like in size. For Forest Grove. The city funded 30% in their general fund. Some cities have an EID, which is actually becoming less popular. 7% from TLT, memberships is 11%, so on and so forth. So it's really important to understand how the other cities are accomplishing this. It's not just becoming a part of the Main Street program and magically everything turns into gold dust, but it is a lot of work, and funding is necessary to make things move quicker. And so again, the cities that are more successful are the cities that have that financial funding. Next slide. Any questions?
Questions? So I have a question. My understanding going into it was that the Main Street program was going to be separate from the City Club. There was going to be a separate board. And then like in the presentation, it said there was applications for the board, and then there's going to be panels. So I guess what I need more clarification is, it sounds like now that City Club is the Main Street program, and the Main Street program is City Club. And so when we're talking about budgets, there's a list of a lot of things that City Club did, and then there's a need for Main Street. But how are we supposed to know which is for what? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm really confused.
Absolutely.
I'm really confused by like how the transparency in the budgets. And
so that is a conversation we had with the Main Street coordinator and with actually our network of people in Oregon, because we have phone calls and Zoom videos with all of the other Main Street coordinating leads in the state of Oregon to see how they did it. And really the answer to that question is, once you are the Main Street program, like the City Club is now the Main Street program and the Main Street program is the City Club, that's you now. And that is one reason why I showed you our mission. Our mission is in line with the Main Street program's mission. It always has been. We have always provided assistance to the downtown businesses. We have always spent time volunteering to clean up the downtown, and we have always had events and community engagement events. So these are all things the City Club of Forest Grove has done before the Main Street program was even a part of Forest Grove. So nothing has changed. If the city was to give part of the budget to the City Club, it's all Main Street program. Everything we do is for the revitalization of Main Street, of the downtown district.
on those Zoom calls, what's the average budget for a Main Street program? Like, what's the average? I mean, because you're saying 30%, but like 30, I need to know the number at the top.
It was ranging between $120,000 a year to $340,000 for a like-sized city.
Lots of interesting things to think about. I will tell you what I feel comfortable with, because the council did write the letter and has an agreement for the Main Street program is if you all, like I saw in the timeline, the grant proposals, if there's state grants, if you need a letter of support and you need the mayor's signature, like I don't think I need, and staff can correct me, but at this point, because it went before council and we have consensus, I can sign a letter without coming and asking for council support because we've already given council support. So I think, as long as I tell other people, as long as I have 48 hours notice, then I'm totally, I need a little bit of time to be able to write. Did you chuckle at my 48-hour notice? I thought that's reasonable. Did you chuckle when I said I need 48 hours? Yeah, I'm just saying I have two jobs, but that's something we can do for sure. Like I think there, my understanding is there's some state grants, and if you need letters of support.
Grant season's coming, so I definitely will be.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to move on to item F on our agenda, which is public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions. The City Council will now consider Order 2024-04. If approved, Order 2024-04 will affirm the Council's decision to deny the second appeal and uphold the Type 2 Administrative and Planning Commission decisions, approving with conditions the site development review application for the proposed Crane Data Center campus. The council had held a public hearing to consider the second appeal on October 14th, 2024, at which they voted 6-0 to direct staff to return with an order why do you give me such hard words? I can't even say it. Memorializing, thank you. Memorializing, their decision to deny the appeal and uphold the Administrative and Planning Commission decisions. Does the council have any questions for staff about the order? Any questions for staff? Seeing none. Where's my pen? Is there a motion from council to approve the order?
Yes, I'll move that we approve order 2024-04.
I need a second. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Just for clarification for Robert's Rules of Orders, seconding a motion doesn't mean you support the motion or what's going to be discussed, but it just opens it for a discussion. So you can still second something and vote against it later.
Okay, second.
Thank you, Mariah. Order number 2024-04 was moved by Councilor Martinez and seconded by Councilor Valenzuela. There is a motion on the floor to adopt Order 2024-04. Is there discussion from council? I'm opening the discussion. Any discussion?
Yes, I have some points to make here. We've been hearing from our community, and I am hoping that the community will understand what the question before us is. We have received offensive emails about this. That is inappropriate. But the question before us is not whether we want a data center here or not. That for me would be very easy. And I would say, no, I don't. And I would vote against it. That's not the question before us. And I really hope the community understands that. Because we care for our city. Mm-hmm. And, this is just probably, I've been here for 4 years. This is the hardest vote that I have to take, that I have to make here. Because I do hear my community. And, we take a lot of things in, like the offensive emails. That's unwarranted. You can speak your mind, but not be disrespectful. So that's my discussion. I don't know if I'm, out of order here, but I really feel I need to express this, these sentiments right now.
And I'm in agreement with Councilor Valenzuela.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the ordinance? Yeah, Councilor Gustafson.
There was a question about the height of the building. Was the height of the building, if somebody could remind me, part of the application that was submitted?
Or we can ask you questions during this
Is this
discussion. I thought it was just discussion for council, but
Oh, my
I don't know.
apologies.
Is it?
Yes, it's just a discussion for council at this point. Public hearing is closed. And this is just sort of, does this order memorialize what the decision already was? To answer your question, the height of the buildings were discussed, but they were approved as submitted by the applicant.
I think my question is there a height limit?
There is no height limit in the light industrial zone.
So when I brought that up during the appeal, that like right now, this is what's in the site review for this application. And what the developer made mention in the public record was that he didn't know for sure if he would need it to be that high. But he wasn't going to talk to us about the height level until there's going to be a second application, I believe it sounded like. And I don't know if we should really get into that, but he was not going to really discuss the second building and the height level and coming to a compromise with that until that review came before council.
And that was kind of my question, is in that area, do we have a height limit like we do in
No,
downtown?
Not for light industrial. And that's something that we can discuss on the development code.
Right.
I mean, will we have a say?
Well, it can be a conditional, but that's for a later decision, but that can be a conditional use, a conditional term, right? Or is that how it's worded? It's a conditional, it's
Part of
something.
the development code, we would have to put it in the development.
Well, there's two different things. Like for future, we would have to we would have to change the development code if we wanted a height limit. For this project, it's something we could potentially talk to them about, the applicant about. I
didn't think this was a conditional use situation.
This was not a conditional use
It's not.
situation. The conditional use that you're referencing is the conditional use that would need to be filed for the portion of the site review that relates to the substation. Thank you, Jesse. That's the part that has not been approved yet. Two buildings have been approved as submitted. But Oregon has a goalpost rule where we cannot apply a new regulation retroactively to application that basically came in before that
Sure.
regulation. I think we talked about that in the hearing. But if we take it focus away from this application right now, that's certainly something that is on staff's radar, and I think we're prepared to discuss with the council, the planning commission, as potentially a code amendment in the future. Sure.
Okay, good. That's the only question I have, and I concur with my other counselors. Abusing city council is never the path, ever.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? I don't want to. Will the city manager read the order by title only?
Order 2024-04, affirming the Type 2 Administrative and Planning Commission decisions approving with conditions the site development review application for the proposed Crane Data Center campus and denying the second appeal of the decision. File numbers 311-24-000006-PLNG, 311-24-000033 PLNG, and 311-24-000038-PLNG.
Thank you. Will the city recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Gustafson?
Yes.
Councilor Martinez?
Yes.
Councilor Marshall?
Yes.
Councilor Valenzuela?
Abstain.
Mayor Wenzel?
Yes. The vote is 4-0 with one abstention and to approve order 2024-04. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Resolution 2024-41, approving project improvements to the Community Development Block Grant Streetscape Enhancement Area in downtown Forest Grove and authorizing the expenditure of funds. Oh, you're the same person.
It has my name on it.
Yep. I was going to say, oh, here we go.
Basically, this is a resolution that kind of memorializes your direction at our previous work session about all these things that are related to the street trees, the trash receptacles, and the lighting. And it's there for your review, and staff is available for any questions you might.
Any questions for staff? What's the total cost that we think it's going to be? Not to exceed 475,000. I got it. I found it in the whereas.
If you scroll down, Mariah.
Oh, here we go.
And
I'm real excited about it. I think it's going to be. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good project. What's up? Nothing. Okay. Any other? Oh, Councilor Gustafson.
Will there be other steps to this so we can kind of watch the process of planning for this project moving forward? I ask because one of my questions will be where the other electrical unit would be placed.
I can answer that one.
Sure. Thanks.
So we don't know where the other electrical unit will be placed yet. We're still working on that. It can only go in certain locations because it does require a fairly large box to accompany it. And so in some areas of the streetscape, it simply just won't fit. And so we're going to have to try and find a location. The intent behind it was to increase the ability for events to occur and to plug in without having to cross a whole bunch of cords. And so kind of whatever meets that intent and wherever we can find a location is likely where we will want to install that. So the only other thing I would add about the costs is these are estimates. They're planning level estimates. There is not a contingency included in this. If after the bid goes out, when we receive the bid, if it is over, then we will certainly come back to the council and talk about that. The other thing in terms of outreach that I think is important is we have been in touch with the City Club. We're going to have a meeting of downtown business owners to kind of brief and educate on the plan that's going to happen. We're looking at trying to bid this sometime in the November timeframe so we can obligate the money prior to the ARPA funds expiring if we get those obligated by December 31st. We'll also be doing an outreach campaign at the same time about what improvements are coming and when. So you could expect a flyer, you can expect something on the website, maybe on social media. We do want to make sure that this project doesn't catch anybody by surprise and that it's fully kind of briefed, if you will, for those folks that are going to see it, because it will be a fairly visible project. So the last thing I would just add is we are looking to try and do this in the wintertime when there are fewer events, so it doesn't conflict with existing community events.
Great. Any other questions for staff? Okay, is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve Resolution 2024-41.
Okay, Resolution 2024-41 was moved by Councilor Valenzuela and seconded by Councilor Marshall. Do we do discussion first or city read it by title only? I think title only. City Manager, will you please read it by title only?
Resolution 2024-41, approving project improvements to the Community Development Block Grant Streetscape Enhancement Area in downtown Forest Grove and authorizing expenditure of funds.
Awesome. Okay, let's open it for discussion. Just circling back to our previous presentation for Main Street program, it's really hard for us to put things in our budget, but I feel like this is a project that will help the Main Street program. I mean, this is what the city of Forest Grove does, is like we figure out how to collaborate and cooperatively work together with our nonprofits. And so I feel like this is a huge investment, back into our Main Street program, our downtown core, our urban renewal district. And I'm just really happy that we had American Rescue Plan dollars to use, our TLT dollars to use, our street fund. I mean, this is really just going to be such a good project. So that's all I want to say about it. Okay, since it has some money stuff, we're going to do a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Gustafson?
Yes.
Counselor Martinez?
Yes.
Counselor Marshall?
Yes.
Counselor Valenzuela?
Yes.
Mayor Wenzel?
Yes, in a vote of 5-0, Resolution 2024-41 is approved by the Forest Grove City Council. Okay, we're now moving on to Resolution 2024-42, and we're going to have our Fire Chief, Jim Gearing, present.
Thank you, Chief. Hi, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Just a few brief comments here. This is an agreement that has been in place for a number of years, and previously the agreement was in the form of an MOU. Not long ago, the Oregon Department of Forestry asked that we put this agreement into an IGA, and we're doing that tonight. We're asking the council to support that and authorize the city manager to enter into that agreement. The agreement continues to allow us to send out one of our employees, a chief officer, as an overhead assignment on an incident management team, and then to pay that employee and seek reimbursement from ODF. There's no cost to the city. In fact, there's an 8% administrative overhead that we're allowed to seek reimbursement as well. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thanks, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Nope, I don't see any. You're getting off easy tonight, Chief. Okay, is there a motion on the floor?
I move to approve Resolution 2024-42.
Second.
Okay, Resolution 2024-42 was moved by Councilor Gustafson and seconded by Councilor Valenzuela. Will the city manager please read it by title only?
Resolution 2024-42, authorizing the city manager to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for wildland fire support liaison services by and between the state of Oregon, acting by and through the Oregon Department of Forestry and Forest Grove Fire and Rescue Department.
Thank you, Jesse. Open for discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say aye. Hearing none, Resolution 2024-42 is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a vote of 5-0. We are now moving on to council communications. My councilor names aren't on here. We'll start with Councilor Gustafson.
Okay. There is a new boat ramp at the Barney Reservoir. And a bunch of updates from the Public Arts Commission. There was a mini grant requested and approved for a lovely mural at Cornelius Elementary. And the Parks and Recreation requested assistance finding an artist for a mural project at Rogers Park.
At which park?
Rogers.
Okay.
And there are plaques being developed right now to post in areas that have mural art and other arts to say, you know, it was partially funded by the Public Arts Commission. So, something that shows, you know, some who's helping get these projects off the ground and bringing all this beauty to Forest Grove. And my suggestion was plaques, just so that we had kind of some name recognition, because one of the challenges is marketing the Public Arts Commission and what they are doing, and such things like the art festivals that they've had recently. The Lincoln Park mural call for artists is open, and there is a Fall into Art event, which I really don't know much about, but I know that there's been posts about it on Facebook. And then you've probably all noticed that during our consent agenda, there was a request for a subcommittee for the Festival of the Arts for 2025, which has been approved. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez.
The Sister City Committee is prepared now for the Japanese delegation who will be arriving tomorrow afternoon, about 4 o'clock, 4:20 in Forest Grove. All of the events are scheduled and approved. We have a celebration dinner on Wednesday evening, and the mayor and his assistant will be leaving then the next day. And then the rest of the delegation, the students and adults, will be leaving early Saturday morning.
And I think just to follow up with Councilor Martinez, everyone received an invitation to the news and the dinner on Wednesday, an email from Joyce, and you're supposed to RSVP by October 10th. So just following up, are any of y'all coming to that? Some of you look surprised.
It's the same night as Centro is doing their campaign.
On the 30th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I did receive it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure.
No, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Marshall.
As far as local stuff, last two Parks and Rec meetings did not get past the discussion of the cost recovery plan because we had guests there, and so we spent the majority of the hour discussing that. And so we will have another meeting Wednesday, 6:30, to kind of go over a little bit more of the cost recovery plan. So I'll have more information for the next meeting to kind of bring to you. Also went on the LOC trip with the mayor. We did a number of tours. I think the one I was most interested in was a tour of the Redmond airport and being able to see the smoke jumpers and what they do and how far they reach as far as their the crazy stuff that they do, jumping out of planes into fires with a backpack. It was pretty cool to see, and how they support basically the Reading up to Washington over to Montana. So a lot of cool stuff we learned there. So it was very interesting.
Cool. Thank you. Councilor Valenzuela.
All right, so I have nothing to report. We didn't have a meeting for the Library Commission this month. Our next meeting is on November 13th. I want to thank all of you who attended the gathering of groups this year, and hopefully we can do it next year as well. And remember to vote, everyone.
Thank you. City Manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. The LOC did come out with their top 9 or 10 legislative items. So the top 5 are community infrastructure and housing development funding, the 2025 transportation package. Number 3 was recreational immunity. 4 was behavioral health enhancements, and 5 was lodging tax flexibility. As the community may recall, the City Council submitted a list to LOC. We were one of 100 and some cities that submitted a list, and so it's good to see the final list come out. The city will be applying for a BRIC grant. That's what's called a Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant to help fund the water tank. The water tank is currently in the master plan. It's the one that's supposed to be funded up on Watercrest Avenue. The grant that we're going to be applying for is for $27 million. It's due this coming March, so there's still quite a bit of time prior to applying. We did make it through the initial certification process with the state, so we're encouraged by that, but there were lots of projects that made that kind of first initial certification, but that will be moving forward. More to follow on that. The Safe Routes to School grant was officially submitted to ODOT last week. That's the grant for $1.7 million to look at the Mountain View intersection on your way to Neil Armstrong Middle School. So that is in progress. Also, the Public Works Administrative Building. This was the building that the City Council approved in the last budget. We are currently in the design development phase. We're in what's called stage 2. So we're approximately at that 10 to 30% design phase. We're looking at a lot of details of the building, how the circulation works, where the entrance is going to be, parking, etc. So staff has been working with both the construction manager, general contractor, but also the designer. Please recall that council approved a CMGC contract, which allows both the designer and the contractor to work together and value engineer the structure while we're going through design. So it's been a very good process so far. We're really encouraged with some of the initial results that we're getting. More to follow on that. And then last but certainly not least, the city's emergency water intertie. This was a project that was approved in the last budget as well. That's moving forward with construction. Pacific North Construction at McMinnville was the lowest bid, and a contract has been signed. So we're looking to move forward with constructing that project here shortly. With that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. I also went on the LOC, or went to the LOC conference and had a great time. So one thing that, since we were talking about Main Street, downtown economic development, I went to a tour in Sisters, and they had a maker space area, and they didn't need that whole space. But anyways, on the back side of the door, it's right in where their farmers market is. Like there's like a little food court or food cart area a block away, but they use TLT dollars to put the QR codes for community events, like places to eat at, shops, right? And so you didn't have to staff it. Like no one staffed it. And then the person who let them use those windows, the doors on the building, like received a little bit of a fee each month. And it was just a really good use of TLT dollars. And then I also just got to see, and I think Greg, I sent it to Jesse too, just like as we're working on our East Forest Grove Safety Improvement Plan, just, how to put a little pedestrian island in that crosswalk will be really important. Let's see, it was a really good trip. And then, okay, I'll go with, sorry, I kind of got sidetracked because I was listening to Council Marshall. I wasn't going to report on LOC. I was happy that Metro came to report about their recycle initiative. I think that's going to be really important to tell our community members about, to get input, because the fees are going to increase. And we really want to make sure that people in Forest Grove know what's coming. I've also sent an invitation to Juan Carlos or Councilor Gonzalez and Metro about SHS funding and affordable housing measure, because there's some talk on the county level that they're going to float an idea to take some of those SHS funding and put it towards affordable housing. And what I'm hearing from the county is there's really not an excess of SHS funding. What I'm hearing from Metro is that there is. So it'll be really good to have a presentation to get to the bottom of it. I do know that from my vantage point as the mayor of Forest Grove, I do feel that SHS funding has made a difference in this community, but I also feel affordable housing. I mean, the thing about housing, right, is that you can't go wrong putting money into housing on any level of the spectrum, whether it's temporary housing, affordable housing, market rate. I mean, we just need it in every area. So we should look for a presentation from Metro on that. So I was at, last week we did a ribbon cutting for the 26th Avenue Road Improvement Project, which was really cool. That was a $4.5 million project, all funded by the city of Forest Grove. Sidewalks. It's just so much safer to walk, to bike, to live in that neighborhood with Stites Parks over there. While I was there, I was speaking to the engineer on that project, and he says that it looks like Fern Hill, the intersection of Maple and Fern Hill, that's going to be a MISTIP project for next year. That could start maybe sooner than summer, but they're working with ODOT and the railroad, so that could take a little bit. And HLB met and they recapped their TLC. They did a TLC forum, little event last summer, and it was not well attended. So they're thinking of changing the time of year and then also partnering with Friends of Historic Forest Grove to try to ramp up that participation. And then Councilor Gustafson, do you know when the next Park or Public Arts Commission meeting is?
We just had it, so another month.
Okay, if you could text or email me that date, because Neil from HLB wants to do a history photo project or a mural and wants to collaborate with the Public Arts Commission. And there's some talk about where to put that and how to do it. We've all probably been receiving emails from, and we had public testimony today about the Parks and Fee rate study, and we have not gotten any numbers. But I do think that we have to practice what we preach, and we do want community engagement, and we're getting community engagement now. So, I'm just going to put it out there to staff and to council that as we have a better idea of what this cost recovery proposal is, that we get to work with our community members, our nonprofit organizations, our youth sports, and really try to work it out together to see the give and take. So if that means I think we try to do 2 or 3 months ago, Anne hosted a community engagement, and there wasn't a lot of people that showed up for that. But I think now people are invested, they're hearing about it, so we should circle back to that and try to engage with that group some more. And, I just want to put it on an upcoming work session that I would like to look at. Well, and I think, when we do our 2040 plan, our budget, all these things, we have our economic opportunity analysis later, but we really do need to do a development code update. And I would love to have a work session on that. So those are my mayor's comments. Okay, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Meeting adjourned. And then we're going to stay for a work session. Okay, I'd like to order this work session of the Forest Grove City Council. The topic is economic opportunity analysis, and I'm going to turn it over to our community development director and our economic development director, Brian Pohl and Miles Glowacki.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, Brian Pohl, community development director, here with Miles Glowacki and Jerry Johnson from Johnson Economics. Every 5 years or so, cities are required to update their economic opportunities analysis, which is adopted as part of our comprehensive plan, which is sort of a non-regulatory framework of policies that guide different sorts of aspects of city governance, particularly land use, things like that. We last did one in 2019, so we are right at the 5-year mark. The 5-year mark is not required, but it is sort of supposed to generally update it frequently. And so we are hitting the 5-year mark, and we put out an RFP and are happy to introduce our consultant with Johnson Economics, who is doing the work, and he's going to go through a presentation with you of the preliminary findings of the EOA for Forest Grove. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Jerry Johnson.
All right, thanks. I'm not sure, Jessica, do you have control of it? Who's got control? You do. Okay. All right. Good. So Brian already sort of gave you an overview of what EOA is. It's a planning document required as part of the state land use system. It's really to make sure that you understand what you're trying to do from an economic development perspective and making sure your land use system is consistent with the requirements of what you anticipate or hope to do in economic development pieces. You typically have a housing needs analysis, which is a separate piece, economic opportunities. There's regional guidance through the 2040 plan, and which is getting a little old to keep talking about the 2040 plan. That's been around for 30 years now, I think. But you have regional guidelines, you've got your local guidelines, you take your comprehensive plan where you really try to realize those and actualize them into code, development codes, city codes. There's an economic development strategic plan that often comes out of this. The EOA gives background information on what the structure of your economy is and how you work within a region to try to help and formulate those plans. Then there's zoning updates, which I believe we just referred to in the last one. Next slide, please. What we try to do with this, identify local goals or targets, what you want to be. From an economic development perspective, what sort of growth would you like to see? What sort of industries would you like to see grow? Do a forecast of your economic trends for job growth. There's a lot of different ways to do the forecast. We'll run through a few different alternatives in here. You evaluate your inventory of property. What does your land assets look like? What capacity do you have to accommodate that growth? You reconcile that and see if you've got adequate capacity, you have the right kind of capacity or not. You formulate new policies to address any imbalances you might find. And then you update your comprehensive, there's a Goal 9 economic development element within your comprehensive plan. That's a sort of a policy level piece, but then you can tie into other things. And as Brian mentioned, these are recommended to be happening every 5 years. They don't tend to happen every 5 years in every jurisdiction because it depends on their funding. Small jurisdictions sort of wait around for a DLCD grant, and then eventually DLCD will make them do one. So again, what we take a look at is, from the economic standpoint, we take a look at your background, the trends. So this is a grounded forecast. It's a expected growth. You're allowed to be aspirational in what your growth will be. There's a fine line between aspiration and hallucination or delusion. And so you want to make sure the things you want to be actually make sense within the regional context, within what your actual characteristics of your community are. We look for a demand for what you need. We look at your supply, you reconcile it, and that's your economic opportunities analysis. And then from that, you do strategic planning and comprehensive plan updates, which I think I've redundant from what I just went through. Just to give you an idea on the next one. Yeah. The last one basically found that you guys had enough land on the industrial side at that point in time for your 20-year forecasted need. There was need for additional mixed-use lands, which address residential, commercial, office, retail, a lot of different uses. It's hard to know how they'll be utilized, so you really don't know how much capacity is within those, but there was a lot of demand for that at that time, or anticipated demand. And at that point, you had a significant oversupply of designated industrial land in the city that you could repurpose for other employment uses. This update's coming to slightly different conclusions, just as a lead-in, but we'll talk about some of those in this because they're still preliminary. So we look through your demographic employment trends. I think you guys, a lot of this stuff may be really familiar, so I won't dwell on a bunch of stuff. This seems really obvious. So if I can get the next one, Mariah. Overall employment levels, you've been growing at a pretty consistent rate, about 2.2% since over the last decade. This is, you're now above your pre-COVID levels, so you're actually, which is actually a good thing. The Portland metropolitan area, city of Portland itself, still is well below their pre-COVID levels, so they have not recovered. You guys on the road to recovery. All of Washington County is, but the broader metropolitan area less so. One. You look at your employment growth, obviously big drops in 2020 with the pandemic. Came out of it rather robustly. 2022 was a very good year. This is based off QCW data, which is the best data source we have, but it's based off covered employment filings. And it's a little late in updating, so this data is a little old. We take a look at what's happened in 2023 from more current surveys, which are less reliable, but we look at it to try to set things. The growth rates continued in 2023, although it was lower level than 2022. Keep in mind, a lot of the growth in 2021, 2022 was bouncing back from the bottom. So you got a very rapid growth that you would recovering what you just given up. But if you take a look at how you've done relative to the state of Oregon in the last decade, you've outperformed the state pretty significantly, the city of Forest Grove. As far as rates of growth, yeah, right, next one. We take a look at your covered employment and your base on the one on the left-hand side. It's not going to surprise you, educational services is a very major employer in Forest Grove, followed by healthcare, social assistance. You actually have a lot of senior retirement homes in the area, as well as normal, traditional healthcare. Combination food service has been very strong, but you actually have a very strong manufacturing base in both all metals, wood, and food manufacturing, and your construction industry is pretty strong. So you've got a really pretty broad-based economy. It sort of gets overwhelmed in the data because of Pacific's, the scale of Pacific just sort of swamps everything out, but it's got a lot of good things going, and the manufacturing is really pretty good. If you take a look at what's grown in the last decade, it hasn't been there. It's been more in food manufacturing, construction, accommodation, food service, the university as well. So it's been a little broad-based on the growth, but you still are doing quite well, but it's still a big piece of your economy. Next slide. I do want to point out all the time, we always talk about the size of firms. It's important when you do economic development. You have an enormous amount of small firms in the area, but if you look at the overall number of employees, your big firms are really significant as well. But what you have a lot of strength in, which is really atypical around the state, is that 20 to 250 person firms. You've got a lot of people in that middle section, sort of a little bit more than most of the other areas do. That's a good, healthy expansion profile. Next slide. Population growth rate, you guys are probably aware of this. You're growing at a relatively rapid rate on the population side. This is going to lead to demand for a lot of other things related to the population growth. We typically take a look at the basic industry types, manufacturers and things that you get employment and then people come in there. But once people are here, now they need services, they need retail goods, they need things. And so then the population itself becomes the generator of economic growth as well. So you've got a really robust county growth level, but your population base is growing quite a bit, and it's actually growing with a fairly affluent profile, which is actually going to change some of the support parameters of what's going to be viable in your community over time. As you get, is particularly in retail, it's almost like a step function where you can't support certain stores until you pass a certain size limit, and all of a sudden a lot of things open up, and you guys are getting to the point where I think a lot of retailers are going to start looking to provide services locally because you're large enough that they don't need to just have people drive farther. You're also aging. This is not surprising. You're not aging as fast as the nation or actually the region as a whole. But the anticipation is we'll all be getting, our profile is getting older, the 2024 to 2029 and 2034, a lot of growth in the 70 plus category. You'll see a little bit less of the younger people. This is an ongoing problem we're facing nationwide. Fortunately, not as much as China, Japan, or Korea right now, but the population bust is going to be a bit of an issue for labor forces as people are aging, and it changes the demand for services and things that are going to be viable. Commuting-wise, this is a profile from 2021 of the number of people who live and work in your community, which is the circle. Forest Grove is on the left. So you got 1,921 people live and work in Forest Grove in the workforce. Over 10,000 commute out of Forest Grove to work elsewhere. But you got 6,100, almost 6,200 that are commuting in too. So while you're a bedroom community, you're a light bedroom community. We work with a lot of communities where, there's only like 10% of their people actually can work in the local community. You've got a lot of people coming in to Forest Grove to work as well as people leaving Forest Grove. If you look at the Washington County as a whole, which is the one on the right, Washington County is a net importer of labor. So more people commute into Washington County than to commute out of other areas. So, it used to always be the central Portland and everybody commuted in. Washington County now is actually a net importer of labor, and people commute in than to commute out. All right, if you've got questions, you can ask.
Can we go back to the slide? Yeah. So is it just 16,000 because you're not anyone under the age of 18 is not? So the circle on my left,
yes,
that's about 18,000 people, and we're at a 28,000 population. So I'm just trying to figure out.
This is for your workforce. So these are people.
It's just people working. So under the age of 18 is not included.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't get the kids. Well, the kids could be working.
And I was doing math. I'm just going to be very honest. I was trying to catch up doing the math. And so within the 1,900 are the people who live in Forest Grove and work in Forest Grove.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then 10,000 goes out and 6,000 comes in. But wait, that still doesn't add up because then, never mind. I'm going to let go of my math. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Gustafson.
Does this capture remote workers?
What?
Does this capture remote workers as working?
The remote worker thing is a difficult thing to capture because this is it's called a longitudinal employment housing dynamics survey that the Census Bureau does that provides this data. They haven't really dealt with the remote workers very well because particularly the hybrid workers, we're seeing obviously a big increase in remote working. It's impacting a lot of the areas we work in, like with housing needs analysis, like Sisters, Oregon, and Hood River, and even the Dalles now, which have become viable commute options. Or if I'm not commuting, that's where I want to live. Sisters particularly is having this problem with people from the Bay Area move to Sisters, and if you work in service industries in Sisters, it's sort of hard to live in your own town anymore because you can't compete with those people. And because they're relying on employment that isn't available locally anyways. You do get a lot more of that, and it's actually been favoring the suburbs when we do a lot of housing work, and we're seeing a demand for somewhat larger units because people have home offices. we're seeing people willing to accept what would be longer commutes because they're only making those commutes 2 or 3 days a week, not 5 days a week. And so it's a lot easier, like say Hood River. Yeah, that's maybe an hour, but if I'm doing it twice a week, I can do
And
that.
it's a beautiful drive.
And it's a really pretty drive. It's not always, there's a lot of not pretty commutes, but that's a good one. I don't know about the winter. It's, I feel
It gets
scary.
a little iffy. I used to live in Hood River.
It could be pretty, but it could be dangerous. So yeah, we're seeing that impact on a lot of things. It's actually one of the things that's really fascinating. I teach in a master real estate program at Portland State, and one of my students is the manager of Bridgeport Village. And her comment was the great thing for her that she saw during the pandemic was they have a lunch crowd at Bridgeport Village because people were working at home and then going out to lunch. It changed sort of the dynamics of where people move around. And it's been actually favoring the suburban locations because the commute penalty isn't as high anymore. I mean, actually, for a lot of the commuting in Forest Grove, it's not that high anyways because you may only be commuting to Hillsborough. So it's
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to figure out is at my house, 100% of us work from home now, and things have changed. So how have they changed, and what do we need to do to change with them?
Yeah, and to get the commute at home thing is tricky, and this won't pick it up all. It'll ask people where they live and where they work. People working remotely, they're never sure quite how to answer that, and if it's a hybrid, not sure how to answer it. And if you ask the employer, the employment is allocated to where they report it, which tends to be at the office,
Corporate,
even if they're not going into it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Jerry, I'm curious, of the 10,075 that are commuting out of Forest Grove on a routine basis, do we have any idea where they may be commuting to?
Yeah, we actually have that data. There'll be more in the report. It sort of got edited down for this, but you can get information about which jurisdiction they go to. You can actually sort of geocode it to some extent, but it's never exact. And again, it's reported. It's a survey, so you're never sure exactly how accurate it is, but it tends to be pretty good. All right, let's go next slide. This is some of they have distributions of where they work, what kind of incomes they do, what sort of industries they work in. We've got some information on that for both for Forest Grove and local employment type. Same limitations in that data with the remote work. It's hard to get that still, and people are still unsure as to how permanent the remote work will be. Many employees would love remote work to keep going. Many employers are trying to stop that or limit it. A little bit of both. I've got about half of my staff I haven't been able to come back in the office since we've been after the pandemic. Next. We take a look at some target industries, and we'll go through these relatively quickly because I'm going sort of long on this. Plus, it's honestly not as interesting potentially, unless you have industries you really want to target. We take a look at stuff like current concentration, what percentage of your employment do you currently have in that relative to the national averages, which are the prospects, which industries are expected to grow in the next 2 decades, which have attractive characteristics, which can be a lot of different things. It can be high wage levels. It can be a match to your local labor force. It can be that they're fiscally really attractive businesses, or it can be that they're providing services that your residents really want. And so there's many reasons why you may decide to target a particular thing because you find it attractive. There's regional statewide targets, which tend to focus on traded sector industries, which are sort of the traditional export industries. Like things that Business Oregon or Greenlight Portland will go after. You take a look at your local advantages, and you tend to look at the higher impact with your traded sector. Those are the export industries, tend to have higher levels of multipliers, get sort of more economic development, bang for your buck out of those particular types of industries. Now, this one is sort of hard to read. This is a location quotient analysis. What this does, it takes a look at the composition of the employment base relative to national averages. At the Washington County level, very strong in manufacturing, information, construction, management of companies and enterprises. Keep in mind that would be Nike. Nike is a manufacturer, but now with the NICS code, they don't manufacture anything in Washington County. They manage the manufacturing in Washington County and the marketing. And then we have some brief overview of what the wage levels are in different industry sectors. Next one. For Forest Grove, it's obviously very different. Educational services is your major export employment. Almost all of your employment is to export in education because it's such a high proportion. Again, but that's net new money. The reason they focus on these sorts of export industries is it brings net new money into your community. People come in, spend money, and then leave. And it stays in your community to circulate a little bit more. Your manufacturing, food, metals, and wood are still strong, as well as accommodation, food service. Also export. And then, sorry, go ahead. You can go forward on this. Yeah. We take a look at a shift share. This is just basically which industries are you outperforming in. And education also is one of those, but accommodation, food services, construction, manufacturing, a whole range of industries. You guys, again, have been outperforming the state as a whole. We started taking a look at which industries you're doing very well in. It's a really broad band of industries that you've done quite well with. Next. The regional forecast, this is the one, there's multiple regional forecasts out there right now. This is the one the state of Oregon does, the Oregon Employment Department. The 10-year forecast for the region. They don't do at a city level, they do the broader region, so it's Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington counties. They take a look at what the anticipated change over the next decade is going to be, and they see a lot of growth, and again, a broad range of areas outside of finance and insurance, which they expect to go down. But accommodation, food service, arts, entertainment, you can see all of them. Pretty good, strong, broad-based expansion over the next 10 years. We take a look at some of the target industries. These are the ones that are identified in the last EOA, but we've added a few. You've had tourism winery development, which is really more of a gateway to the tourist area. Retirement services, which you have a lot of strength in, but there is potential for you guys to go to the newer versions of how these things happen, more of a Springs type, multi-generational age and place type concepts, which are really the way the industry is going now, where you go in as independent living and you've got different levels of care available to you. These will be transitioning over time to these. Lots of stuff in the technology, either information, tier 2 or 3 suppliers to the tech industry. You really don't have the big site for the chip manufacturer, right? But for an Intel, but you can do things that are suppliers, and you could also get smaller ones, like we worked with Sherwood. They got Lam Research, and that was just in a vacant high cube industrial building that was actually in town. They needed something really quickly to do that. But you can take a look at the whole supply chain for the tech industries. Maybe you maintain, the big players may be in Hillsborough, but there's a lot to play with in that industry as far as support industries with good high-paying jobs. The information, you guys have talked about the data centers. Those are out there now. There's a lot of that stuff out there. They can be fiscally really attractive. They don't have a lot of employment in them, but you get a lot of investment in a site. Manufacturing, you've done well with that. There's really no reason to move away from it, and certainly encourage more of that. And some of the tech is also manufacturing. And then quality of life tenants, which gets more like entertainment, retail, services, the type of thing that your residents might want to see. And that may come down to certain types of retailers that you think would be great to have, or if you want, local entertainment options, encouraging, even if it's community center type pieces. There's different ways to get at that, but a lot of that is driven not by the employment, but by the fact that you've got a population that's going to want things. Next. I'm going to go through really quickly what the land needs are looking like with some of the baseline forecast scenarios. So if we go to the next slide, we basically look at employment forecast by industry sector. We take a look at the space needs by employee for this each industry sector, convert those to real estate products they tend to utilize, and then look at the land site needs for that particular industry. Next one, Mariah. So we take the 2022 employment levels, this is your employment profile from the QCW. This is the covered employment data, and it shows about a little over 7,600 jobs in 2022. The county grew from 2022 to 2024 at a 2.3% expansion. If you apply the expansion growth rates to each one of the industry types, in your mix, that would move your employment levels up to about 7,800 in 2024 for covered. And there's a conversion to non-covered employment. There's a lot of uses, like if you're sole proprietors and things you don't report as covered employment if you're self-employed. And so in some industries, that's quite high. And so we make that conversion to try to get a 2024 estimate. There's, industries like real estate or there's a lot of different ones that people are self-employed, even construction if they're just tradesmen and they're not working as a corporation. Next slide. So we looked at 3 forecasts in this particular exercise. We looked at the scenario 1, which is considered the safe harbor. The state will let you just basically take a look at the state forecast of growth by sector for the next 10 years, apply it and extend it out over 20 years to your current employment mix and say, here's what my employment base would look like. If we do that, safe harbor just means the state won't contest it. You'd get about a 1.3% rate of growth. They won't contest things otherwise necessarily, but they have the right to. If you take this, they can't do anything. Metro's current draft urban growth report that's out right now has a really modest growth forecast, remarkably modest. They're expecting declines in transportation, warehousing, all sorts of crazy things. I mean, I know it's a little nutty. I don't know if you've heard this. I don't have great faith in it, but if you adopt their forecast, you grow at 0.3%. So really modest. We did a third scenario, which is just a little bit closer to your historic. Keep in mind, historically, you've grown at 2.2% for the last decade. This takes some of the target industries that we talked about, accelerates them a little bit, and does like a weighted average between your historic and the state forecast by the sector. And it gets you about a 1.9% rate of growth. And let's see, next slide. This takes a look at what it looks like. Your historic is in the blue line. These are the 3 scenarios relative to there's a lineal forecast, which is basically just more of like you did a regression line through your historic growth and took it forward. So that's this little dotted lines. There's another dotted line at the bottom with a logarithmic, which is basically assumes your rate of growth continues to decline over time. That's actually quite consistent with Metro's growth forecast, which is that you just sort of bottom out. And then we've got the scenario 1 and 3, which are more aggressive, right? And that's a decision jurisdictions can make about how aggressive they want to be. Again, you could be aspirational. You could take any of these 3 forecasts. We'd feel really comfortable defending them to DL City. They would go for any of these because none of these are particularly using anything that they don't accept. And so you can be a little bit more aggressive if you want different kinds of growth. And you can change the composition of that growth to what you're hoping to expect, as long as you can back it up as being reasonable and something you can expect. And with your historic rate of growth, I think all those forecasts are things you can use. And throwing them all together now, this takes a look at the demand for industrial or commercial acreage. Scenario 1, this is the one that's safe harbor. You'd have about 140 acres, 46 of industrial, 94 of commercial. Scenario 2, the Metro regional forecast would get you 32 acres of need, 24 acres of commercial, and 7 acres of industrial. And scenario 3, that's 232 acres of land, 100 acres of industrial, 131 of commercial net. And so on the next slide, we just basically balance this off against what you have. So you look at your current inventory and the buildable land inventory that's been coordinated with Metro. You've got about 92 acres of commercial, 50 15 sites, and you got 144 acres of industrial on 43 sites. So if we take that and put it off on the right against the scenarios, under the metro scenario, you've got enough of everything for the next 20 years, as does the region. Under the safe harbor one, under scenario 1, you're short on industrial, but you actually have an excess of commercial. This is actually something else when you talk about the work at home. It's had a real profound impact on demand for office space. The remote working and work from home, we're seeing the office market probably has an overhang of excess inventory. In downtown Portland, it's probably got an overhang for the next 20 years. We probably have enough office space. It's done better in the suburbs than it has in downtown Portland. But right now, the changing patterns of how people are working, they're just using less office space. And everyone's a little unsure how much that comes back or not. It may not. If we go to scenario 3, you've got a pretty significant shortage of industrial, modest shortage of commercial space. Again, none of, I say 81 acres, 88 acres total. None of it is that significant. When you get a finding out of an EOA that says you've got a shortage, you've got a lot of options to do before you just ask for more land. You start looking at intensification, ability to rezone, to better match your land supply to what you might need or expect to need. You can look at more intensification of uses, like we encourage more infill redevelopment to get a little bit more intensity of the utilization of the employment lands. There's a lot of things you can do, but that comes down to the policy side after the fact. It's not till you actually try to do something about adding additional lands that you have to deal with that. At the EOA level, you're just trying to come to the balance and say, I have an issue, I've got the wrong supply of land, either inadequate altogether, I just have the wrong land. And those findings will come out of the EOA and feed into the policy piece. But again, we suggest policy. We don't do policy. Policies for elected. And so the next steps for this is refinement of the target industries, just working about things that you'd like to see happening and try to make sure they're reflected in your documents. Refine the land need forecast. We're not allowed to throw 3 in there. We have to pick one for the number, and then you do the reconciliation and come to the final findings with this in the document. And all that is expected to be done this year. But we're pretty close on the analysis side. We just have to finish writing.
Do we get to ask questions?
All the questions you want.
Okay, do you have any questions?
I just have a comment. It was thank you for the presentation, and I feel somewhat uplifted because you hear all these terrible things about the economy, and then you look at Forest Grove and our charts. I mean, the growth on one of the slides. After the pandemic, it just kind of went up. Yes, it's true. It had dropped dramatically, but it was greater than in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It surpassed that.
You've regained everything plus some.
Plus some, exactly. So I feel kind of good.
Yeah, I'm excited because there's synergy between our 2040 visioning plan, right? Our comprehensive plan, our development code. And then, what I hear on a regional level is really the most value to a city is industrial land, right? And so but also I hope this visioning plan helps us define the type of industrial we want and then help us build a code that allows us to recruit the type of industry that matches the vision of our community. And I think that that's an opportunity, not to be like play on words of this, but you know what I'm saying.
And you're fortunate in Washington County in your location. One, it's an attractive town, but you're in the path of growth where there's growth to be selective about. Yeah. We do this work in communities that haven't had growth in 20 years, and it's hard to do. It's like, well, we'll take anything.
Right. Cool. So what's our next? So our next steps, you guys will do some more work and then come back and then, one thing I guess I will ask is that when you come back, if we could have some guided questions or discussions, so maybe we put, so we can reach out to our steering committee on our visioning plan. So we as a council can look at our comprehensive plan, like really just ask from each of these groups to try to make sure we're doing it together and coming up with something well done.
Good.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, right on time. I'm going to adjourn this work session of the Forest Grove City Council. Thank you, gentlemen. Right on.